Welcome in, everybody. It's another edition of the First and Orange podcast. Parker Gabriel here, Ryan McFadden there, Denver Post Broncos beat reporters coming to you. It's Tuesday, late afternoon, November 21st. We're headed into week 12 of the NFL season already. Ryan, how about that?
Yeah, this season is gone is gone by pretty quick.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's rolling downhill now for the Broncos in a good sense, like in the gravitational sense, not like it's going downhill and, off a cliff. The Broncos have won 4 in a row. It's tied for the longest active win streak in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles, who won at Arrowhead last night against Kansas City to get to 9-1. The Broncos are 5-5. They're a game out of the playoff picture. The computers and the analytics still think it's a long shot that they actually end up in the playoff field. But Ryan, I mean, Minnesota had won 5 in a row. The Broncos, really pretty ball game, really no problems. They breezed right past Minnesota. No, it was ugly, but they got it done on Sunday night. They're back to level. And it's an interesting team in a clubhouse, a locker room that's got quite a bit of energy right now.
Yeah, they do. Like you can tell the vibes has changed drastically from being at 1-5 to now 5-5 and actually in the playoff hunt, which is still to me crazy to actually say they're in the playoff hunt. But yeah, they are. Yeah, you can tell the energy, and one thing you can tell the belief. I think that's one of the things you can know. Like these guys really believe in what's believe in each other. I guess you can tell they believe in the vision Sean Payton has had for this team, and his coaching style, and I think that has translated to the field as well. But yeah, you hit the point. Like it's even after that kind of win against Minnesota, like these guys are like they're going all for it. This is not a team that's like just all right. We'll just wait for next year, get a good pick. No, they're trying to go all in, and you can tell they're locked in and believe in one another.
Yeah, no doubt. So obviously Sunday night, they play really like defensively. Obviously, they gave up a lot of yards on the ground, but after the first quarter and a half, they locked it in pretty good defensively. Obviously, 3 more takeaways, and then offensively, they just really struggled most of the game. And then they get a touchdown drive and a little Russell Wilson magic when they need it late in the game. Touchdown to Courtland Sutton with 1 minute and 3 seconds left. It was just kind of one of those nights, and I thought it was interesting, Ryan. Like after the game, it was like as close to outwardly willing to like be excited as we've seen Sean Payton so far. I think like he called it a gritty drive, and then he was like, "That was a good 2-minute drive now." And he was like, "Courtland Sutton, he's something else, man." Like he had this sort of like almost, just sort of like off the cuff praise as much as we've probably heard from him. And then Monday morning when we talked to him on the conference call, it was right back to, man, if you watch the film I watched, there wasn't a whole lot of good in it and all of this. And so I thought you got a glimpse of Sean Payton believing that maybe this team can make an even bigger run than the one they're on. And then also the sort of like snap back to reality about how much work, especially offensively, the group still has in front of it.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like I was kind of like laughing during Monday's presser because of that. And it's like night and day of his reaction from the game. Because when you heard him on Sunday night, this was a guy that was happy, excited to be back at 500, excited that Russ is being Russ in 2-minute situation. Courtland Sutton continues to create a highlight reel of insane catches. Then Monday morning, you're like, man, did they even win this game? The way he would just pick, like, but I guess that's his, that's his personality. That's who he is. Maybe that's like his approach of, maybe that's like kind of his coaching style where he kind of like gets them back into reality. Like, yeah, we won, but we still got X, Y, and Z to fix.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. And it's interesting too. Like I think I tweeted out the numbers. Yeah. And so, they got the field goal right before halftime. That was a 2-minute drive. And then they scored a touchdown, obviously, in a 2-minute situation when they were trailing by 5 at the end of the game to take the lead. They didn't get the 2-point conversion. But on those 2 drives, 17 plays, 121 yards, and 7 first downs. So 7 first downs in the 2-minute drives, and then 8 other drives they had in the game. They only had 6 first downs on those 8 other drives. So like you can obviously it's not rocket science why he wasn't that happy with what they did offensively, because they really did nothing offensively outside of those 2 2-minute drives. I mean, they got set up just in golden field position, twice by the two Jaquan McMillan takeaways. Didn't score on either of those, kick field goals on both of those. They were 1 of 11 on third down before the last drive. They were 0 of 4 in the red zone before the last drive. And so like it's interesting because if you look at, this is maybe jumping around a little bit, but if you look at over the 1-5 start, they averaged 21.5 points per game offensively. And over the 4-game winning streak, they're averaging 22 points per game offensively. So like they've sort of been, who they are on that side of the ball. And in order for them to really like to say nothing of winning 3 or 4 more in a row, like to beat Cleveland on Sunday, one of the best defensive teams in the league, like they're going to need more offensively. And just overall, it seems like the biggest key for them maybe going forward is figuring out a way to put more points on the board on the offensive side.
Yeah, you saw on Sunday night. I don't think the offense is like Sean Payton said it himself. He said it earlier. Like they have not found their sweet spot, and it's nowhere close. Yep. They made strides. I think one thing I noticed doing this, like outside of the past 2 weeks, I thought they have done a pretty decent job in terms of running the football. So, on Sunday night, it was just the offense wasn't good.
Yeah,
they came through when it mattered most, but Will Lutz sort of was 5 for 5 on field goal attempts. To me, that tells you right there, like they wasn't getting in the end zone quite a bit. And to me, I think if they want to make that run, that's something they're going to have to clean up. They're going to have to figure that out, figure out that continuity. I know Russ numbers look good, but overall, like I still think it's still a work in progress. They're nowhere close to being all the way there yet, or where they're nowhere close to where, you look at this offense and say, all right, or is this an offense that can help them continue to sustain this type of success? And right now, I think that they have really benefited off the defense generating takeaways. I think that's helped them tremendously. But like, if you want to make this winning streak possible, if you want to keep it going, and you actually want to get to the playoffs, and then when you get there, try to win games, they're going to have to get their act cleaned up offensively.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's funny to say that because they're 15th in the NFL in points per game, 21.7. Like it hasn't been great. They haven't been terrible in terms of like point production, especially some of us are old enough, Ryan, to remember what it looked like last year when they averaged 16.9 per game. And so, you're up a touchdown basically over where it was at last year. Russell Wilson has 19 touchdowns against 4 interceptions. He's only got the 1 turnover over the 4-game winning streak. I mean, I think that's really obviously been critical. It's like they're not scoring a ton of points. They're not super efficient offensively. Even like the last 2 weeks, the run game has disappeared a little bit when that had really been, the strength for a few weeks. And even still, they're right in games and then figuring out how to win games because they're just not turning the ball over. And they're forcing a preposterous number of takeaways. I mean, they've got 13 takeaways over the course of the winning streak and just 2 turnovers, a Cortland Sutton fumble and 1 Russell Wilson fumble. And so when you go plus 11 over 4 games, that's how you win like this. And so like, I think at the end of the day, like if they're going to carry this forward, let's say that, let's say they're going to, if they want to finish 5-2 and get to 10 wins and give themselves like a really good chance of making the postseason, like they're probably not going to force 3 1/4, 4 takeaways a game. But there's enough room for improvement in other areas, in particular offensively, and then, stopping the run, that if they can just do a little bit of those things, the idea would be that then you can help offset the fact that you're probably not, going to force a takeaway every other possession for the rest of the season, which is the kind of insane rate that they've been on or close to it over the past month.
Yeah, it's hard to see the amount of turn they've generated. It's hard to see that keep going. Like I don't know if they're going to continue to generate 3 to 4 turnovers every game for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's gonna be hard. Like
Yeah.
it's impressive that they've been able to do it, but to say that it's gonna continue for the rest of the season, that's truly hard to do. Now, if they do it, then man, that's incredible, and that's props to Vance Joseph and props to the defense as well, for rewriting their narrative. But yeah, that's tough to do. So they have to know that it's tough. That like not every game you're going to get two takeaways from Jaquan McMillan that sets you up in the scoring position. That's not going to happen every single game. So they're going to have to like you said, the two things they're going to have to do it better if they want to continue the success. They're going to have to one do a better job at slowing down a run. You gave up 192 yards to the Buffalo Bills and 175 yards to the Minnesota Vikings, who entered that game are near the bottom in yards, rushing yards per game. And then another thing is like I said, you got to find that consistency on offense. Like you go 0 for 4 in the red zone, 2 for 12 on third down, and then they struggle to put points on the board in the third quarter as well. So that's something that we've seen at times throughout the year where they struggle out the gates. They get they kick. They get the ball in the second. They kick to start the game. Then get the ball in the second half, but they have a hard time, taking advantage of that first possession and putting no points on the board in the third quarter. So yeah, I think when you look at if they want to continue to assess outside of just forcing X amount of turnovers a game, it starts with the run defense and it starts with getting some consistency on offense. And I think that's going to be the key moving forward. Is I know like they got the win. It wasn't pretty, but you can't expect this team to continue this success if their offense is not finding that flow or rhythm.
Yep, no doubt about it. And early in the season, they generated as many or more explosive plays in the passing game as anybody in the NFL, and that was sort of like the thing they did. That they weren't winning games, obviously, but they were hitting big plays in the passing game. And now I'm trying to do the math here. Now they're in the bottom third of the NFL. They've got 24 passing plays of 20 plus. And I haven't done the math on it, but I would bet that, the majority of those, they hit Cortland Sutton down the sideline for 33. They've had a couple of like crossing route type of things the last few weeks, but in general, their ability to win over the top in the passing game has really dried up. And so teams are making them, go the length of the field and kind of, chip their way. I mean, you saw, especially the last 2 weeks, but especially on Sunday night, it seemed like every time Russell dropped back, it was, turned and thrown out to the flat to a running back, dumping it off to Samaje Perine. And that's like, I feel like fans watch that and it's frustrating for most of the game. And then like crunch time comes, they get in the 2-minute drive and, Russ goes 4 of the 6 completions to Samaje Perine. And it's like, 7 yards and then 18 yards and 13 yards and 7 for a first down on 3rd and 6. And like, you can do it that way. It's just, and teams are playing this sort of like shell, 2 shell and a lot of coverage. Sean Payton's talked about that. We're just getting a lot of coverage recently. But eventually you want to find a way to force teams to come up a little bit and then to get guys over the top. And whether that's, Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton or the sort of disappeared man, Marvin Mims Jr. You think that it's like that sort of like yo-yo back almost has to be part of the equation at some point. Like they have to find a way to produce that, especially, like this coming week against Cleveland. You're just playing a defense that you're not going to go 70 yards against 4 times. It's just not going to happen. They're really, really good. And so you've got to find a way. This is what happened with Pittsburgh playing Cleveland this last week is like Pittsburgh really didn't do much of anything except for one drive. They broke like a 70-yard touchdown run from Jalen Warren, and that kept him in the game right until the end. So, you got to be able to break the game open. You got to be able to make big plays. Denver hasn't done as much of that in recent weeks, and it's going to be one of the ways to juice your numbers up offensively is just to have the one big hit, 1 or 2 big hits in there. And then those are the type of plays also that can swing a game really fast.
Yeah, it can. And it's funny. Like we talk and they have the guy, I think they have the guy on the roster that can kind of like, get those big plays at Marvin Mims. And we've been talking about this all year. And it almost sounds repetitive at this point that like you would like to see Marvin Mims get more involved. Like he's been one of the best returners in the NFL, no question.
Yep.
But you would love it's like I feel like like he's excelled in that one area. But I feel like, I don't know, this it's just so much talent there in terms of that big playability that's just being bottled up and not used to his true potential. I think someone like Marvin Mims can, like, break a game wide open when the offense is not going right and you need that momentum. He's the type of guy that get open deep and make it and catch a big pass from Russ that can just change the whole course of a game. So you like moving forward for them to generate those more explosive plays. I think one of the ways to get it started, like trying to get him more involved on offense and put him in those opportunities where he can get those deep passing plays for like 20 plus yards.
Yep, no doubt. Minnesota, maybe the NFL might have finally got the message, because as you can see here on the game book from the Minnesota game, 5 kickoffs, all touchbacks, and 2 punts that they did not give Marvin Mims a chance to return. So they were fine. Minnesota was like, look, we're not going to kick it to the guy. And I think you'll see teams largely take that track the rest of the year, because every time he touches the ball in the return game, it seems like something good happens. So it's going to be super interesting. One thing that we don't know, we're recording this, it's Tuesday at about 4 p.m. We'll see, sort of like expecting any minute to get word on what happens with the appeal to Kareem Jackson's most recent suspension. 4 games from the NFL came down yesterday for the hit on Josh Dobbs. I mean, it's not 4 games because of the hit on Josh Dobbs. He wasn't even penalized on the play, but it's the sort of accumulation of things with Kareem this year. So just to sort of like set the deck there, he got suspended 4 games last month. It got reduced on appeal to 2. We're expecting a decision on whether this 4-game suspension gets reduced at all. Second time around, it seems, I'll be surprised if it goes to 2 again, put it that way. It's not impossible. I don't know that. I just, when it happens on the 3rd play that he's back on the field after a suspension, just the league could make a pretty compelling case that like 2 games did not, cause any sort of behavior change or change in approach from Kareem Jackson. So we'll know that for sure, maybe by the time we're done recording this podcast. But either way, Ryan, I mean, you have to imagine that the Broncos are going to be, without Kareem Jackson here for at least a couple of games and maybe up to 4 going forward.
Yeah, and it's tough. It comes like, I think this suspension really comes at a bad time because they're dealing with the ankle injury to PJ Locke. So it depends on how long the suspension is. That it's gonna hurt that safety depth, and especially and it's hard because like you get him back, and Kareem Jackson is a solid player, and he played, to me, I thought he played a solid game against Minnesota, and then boom, he's right back. Like he's back to missing games, and especially at a time where this team is trying to comes to playoff berth.
Yeah.
So your defense is plays really well, and you would love to have someone like Kareem Jackson out there on the field, and especially when you're 5-5 and trying to make a push for the playoffs, you're going to need as much help as you get on the defensive side of the ball. And to have him be suspended for whatever it's going to be 4, or at the moment 4 games.
Yeah.
We'll learn more after the appeal. But let's say if they stay in the 4, you have him out for 4 games. He won't play the Christmas Eve. That's a lot of football. That's a lot of meaningful football games that he's missing. And to top it all, we won't find out till later in the week whether PJ Locke is a go for Sunday against Cleveland and the severity of that injury. So I think this injury is really tough for the defense because, especially at the time, the suspension is really tough for this team because at the time it happened.
Yeah,
like you can't. This is the worst time to have a key guy in your secondary to be suspended for possibly 4 games.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the stretch coming up, we talked a little bit about it. It's critical, right? They've got Cleveland at home. Cleveland 7-3 on Sunday. Then they go on the road, which, by the way, Ryan, time on the Houston game moved up to 11 local time. Yes, exactly what a beat writer wants. On the road at Houston, 6-4, a week from Sunday, and then a division road game at Los Angeles. And not only that, but just like a tough stretch in the schedule where after Cleveland, they go on a 3-game road trip, which isn't all that common in the NFL. Cleveland, Houston, Houston, the Chargers, and then Detroit. And so, if you're missing all 3 of those games, or even, 2 of them plus the Cleveland game, you're right. I mean, it's a critical stretch in the season. It's part of like, it's interesting. I don't have a lot of hot takes about, Kareem and all of that. Like I don't think that the way that anybody plays on the field is necessarily indicative one way or the other of the type of person they are. It's not like I know Kareem Jackson really well personally, but he does a lot of good in the community. His teammates absolutely love him. They swear by his leadership and all that. The only thing is, and Mark Kisler, our columnist, brought this up the first time around, is like, regardless of whether you think that the rule should be the way it is or interpreted the way it is or whatever, by continually putting yourself in this situation, at some point it's going to hurt the team. And there's just no way around the fact that last time it did, and definitely this time it does, given just where they're at roster wise. I mean, the inability to play in a way that the league deems safe consistently is going to disadvantage the Broncos like going forward. And so that's like, you can quibble with whether he hit the guy in the helmet. I mean, he made contact obviously with Josh Dobbs' face mask. You can say there's been other hits in the past that look like that. I mean, that's true. There's a lot of plays in the NFL, but like at the end of the day, he knew he was under the microscope, and 3 plays in, he launched, his hands were back behind him and didn't wrap up and went in with his helmet in his shoulder. And now he's going to be out for a while. And so like, that's a tough blow for the Broncos. And it just is one of those things where it's like, you figured that the NFL was going to go right back to a pretty harsh penalty if he got in trouble again. And it did not take very long for that to happen.
Oh yeah. Like when the play happened, and then when you check Twitter during the game and you saw like the close up, oh, I knew it was going to, the league's going to look at it. Like, that was like, you just sat there and watched the game. Like, you're like, oh, they're going, it's going to happen. And you could tell, like, when Sean Payton spoke on Monday, like, he knew, like, it wasn't like he wasn't shocked. And, you can talk about, and players, one thing I say about Kareem Jackson is that, to me, he plays like a guy, like, he plays like it's 2005. Like, that's, his play style is like, he plays like a guy, like, back in the early his style is like early 2000s style football. But you make a point, like, the rules are the rules. You can argue all day whether the rules are valid or not, but at the same time, it's like, you got to realize they are there, they are in place, and you have to be mindful of that. Because no matter how many times we can go on social media, or know how many times a current or former player can talk about, discuss their displeasure for it, it's still there. It's still in the rule book.
Yeah.
And that's not going to, and that's not going to change. So I think that's right there. You got to be, no matter, like, you have to be mindful of that. Because you can't hurt your team. And right here, if he's out for 4 games, that hurts your team. Because it's not like at that position, if PJ Locke doesn't come back, that room is thin. You got Delarian Turner-Yell, and you have JL Skinner, who hasn't played a snap this year on defense. So, and he was active for the first time on Sunday night.
Yep.
So you don't want that. You don't want that as your safety depth going into this crucial stretch of the season.
Yep.
So yeah, it got to a point where it's like, I think we're at the territory where, this really hurts. Like, I think this one hurts him bad.
Yeah.
Just the timing, the injury, the lock, everything is like, and it's funny how I think the craziest thing about it is like how, Sean Payton joked to Kareem, like Sean Payton told us that he joked to Kareem saying, hey, like, we're glad you're back, but don't screw don't screw this up. And boom, it's like 3 plays in, and you knew, like, the fact that it happened 3 plays in your first game back, and as Sean Payton said also too, you have multiple priors. So whether you can argue where you can argue a lot of things. You can say, hey, like, this hit in particular does not warrant a 4-game suspension, and that could be true. You can make that argument that the hit against Josh Dobbs doesn't warrant a 4-game suspension, but he has a lot of priors before that kind of hurts him as well. So I think that's where you look like, where, to me, if it stands at 4 games, I won't be surprised, because given the fact that it happened 3 plays after his first game back from suspension, he's already suspended before that. He's been fined on 4 different occasions. It's kind of like, it's kind of like that. The NFL is treating him like that bad kid at school. Like you keep going, you keep acting up, and the punishment is going to get more severe. Like we give you a break, and boom, you go back and do it again. So yeah, like I just do. I think the hit might have been warranted a 4-game suspension. I don't know. You could probably make an argument that hit in particular probably not, but I think the league is not going to look at that, but they're going to look at, all right, we brought you back. You reduced the original 4-game to 2, and you've done this multiple times before. I think I think all that is going to be a factor in this decision.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, he told Troy Rank. I mean, this is one of the things where it's like on Tuesday after the Monday night game, like he was in Denver because he didn't travel with the team. He was still suspended at the time, and he had an event because he was giving away Thanksgiving meals in like an underserved community. Right, that's a great thing to do. Like that's like one of those things. It's like a testament to character. And at that point, like he told Troy Rank from Denver 7 at that event that he knew he had to, maybe change a little bit the way he played. And then in the locker room later in the week, the tone was a little bit different. It was, I'm not really clear on what the rule is. I don't know how to interpret it or exactly how to play within it. And then so to say that, to say, well, it's not really black and white to me. It's not really clear how to play within the rules. And then to go out and put both your feet in the ground and lower your head and launch upward at a player, regardless of whether you end up hitting him in the chest or in the helmet. Like the league is, I think that on appeal, even though Derek Brooks, who's an old middle linebacker, is the one, hearing the appeal today, at some point they're going to look at it and be like, I don't really believe that you're trying to work within the framework of what we're asking you to do, and so if that's the case, we'll see here later today. It could stay at 4, maybe it gets reduced a little bit, we'll see. But yeah, so obviously critical time for that, and pretty safe to say, unless something radical happens, that at least won't be on the field on Sunday against Cleveland. We'll see how much further after that. Ryan, before we go, the Browns, I cruised through the condensed version of their game Sunday against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's not very good offensively, but holy cow, is this defense good. I mean, you've got Myles Garrett, probably the defensive player of the year, 13 and a half sacks already this year, and Zadarius Smith on the edge. You've got good guys in the interior. You've got J.O.K. Jeremiah, Owusu Koromoa, leading the linebacking group. You've got good corners. Grant Delpit's playing great at safety. This is a defense that's really good at all 3 levels, and has been arguably, the best defense in the NFL. So 2 teams playing well, 2 defenses playing at really high levels. What do we think Sunday at Empower Field?
This is going to be a low-scoring contest. I'm going to go, I'm going to go 17-14. I'm going to go 17-14 Broncos. I think it's going to be a big game for Will Lutz. So if anyone needs a kicker on their fantasy league and Will Lutz is not on your roster, I would suggest picking him up. If you got him, good for you. I think it's going to be one of those games where it's like Will Lutz is just going to kick a handful of just a bunch of field goals. And I think the key that's going to be here for the Broncos is the offense continue to limit the turnovers. If the offense does not turn the ball, I think the Denver is going to continue their turnover spree on Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But I think I think it's going to come down to the offense. If they can keep it clean, they're not going to get a lot of breaks with this defense. But if they could capitalize on the very few they do, I think they can pull it off. So I'm going to go 17-14. 17-14 Broncos, and it's crazy to say it, but we will be looking at a Broncos team that will be a game over 500 after everything we saw to start the year.
That is crazy. I mean, it's certainly within the realm of possibility. The line's pretty close so far. I think this is one, Ryan, where I feel like I reserve the right to change my mind over the course of the week, because it just feels like one of those weeks. Like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he had some accuracy issues. Obviously, he got thrown in against Baltimore, and then they did enough to win against Pittsburgh. But if he throws the ball in the middle part of the field with the same accuracy issues, the same lack of accuracy that he had against Pittsburgh, then the Broncos have a great chance of getting them a couple times because it's really it's just it doesn't take much against Denver's defense, really opportunistic for a ball, even like the one that they didn't get on Sunday where Pat Surtain, ball over the middle, he pops it up in the air and Josie Jewell almost came down with it. That's the kind of thing that I feel like that's in the cards potentially for the Broncos on Sunday. I'm not sure how good a matchup it is for the Broncos at this point. Cleveland's really good running the ball. They run the ball more frequently than any team in the NFL, like just carries per game. And their defense is playing lights out. So I'm with you. I think really low scoring game right now. We'll see how PJ Locke's doing. We'll see kind of how the week goes, what the vibe is. But right now I'm saying field goal fest as well. Cleveland 16-13, setting up what would then be like obviously a must win for Denver in Houston the week after that.
Oh yeah, if they don't, to me, if they don't beat Cleveland on Sunday, I think that Houston game, I think that's kind of like your playoff or bust type of like playoff or like not type of game. Yep. I feel like if they lose to Houston, if they lose back-to-back games, to me, I think that's it. I think that's it for the season. But if they're, you would think they would not want to. They would try to avoid that. But yeah, if they do lose on Sunday, yeah, that Houston game is going to be very, very critical because that's right there. It's going to decide. To me, I think that game right there will ultimately decide how the rest of the season will go.
Yep. And then flip side, if they win both, I mean, it's on.
It's on. Oh, yeah.
And then you're thinking about not just sneaking in, but if you're not winning the division, at least hosting a wild card game or something like that. So it's that time of year. Surprisingly enough, the Broncos are right in the thick of it. We've seen them obviously turned around big time over the last 4 games. And we'll continue to have all the coverage you need right here, denverpost.com/Broncos. That's Ryan McFadden. I'm Parker Gabriel. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you've got us on YouTube, we will talk to you all next week.